Blueprints for Building Better Girls. The title suggests some sort of etiquette manual or a self-help book, but the book is actually far from it. Can you fill us in on what the title means, what you meant it to say?
Since I was a little girl, I have been obsessed with etiquette books. My grandmother was a big etiquette fan. She, read the newspaper with gloves on, and, fish forks were very important. And so I grew up reading those books, and they gave me a lot of comfort because they basically told you if you behave a certain way in this culture, then you will be accepted, right? You follow the rules and you'll be a good person. So it's something that I always thought about. And hadn't thought about it for a while. I took a creative writing workshop one summer, and the teacher that I had, who I really admired, I had gone to this workshop to work with her specifically, read one of my stories and really disliked it intensely. The reason that she disliked the stories was, she said, don't you realize that as a writer you have a responsibility to create characters that can be role models for future generations of young women? And I was very taken aback. I thought my job as a writer was simply to be interesting and to write stories that felt true, to write authentically about the human experience. And it really, I'm embarrassed to say, it really knocked me back on my heels for a long time. I always wanted to be a good girl, and the idea that I was doing something that felt wrong, that was in some way perhaps destructive, was really hurtful, and it shut me down. And it took some time for me to come around to the idea that you really can't let other people tell you who you are. And if I was a man, no one would say that to me.
But yet I see that maybe you did take it to heart in a way maybe you don't even realize, which is you took on the responsibility not in creating the role models that she thought of, but you've actually kind of created a different kind of a role model, and these are not good girls.
When I set out to write this book, I didn't set out with any sort of idea. I never do. I don't work well with a map. I'm definitely one of those people who, as soon as I make an outline, I want to tear it up, because I don't like to be told what to do, even if it's me that's telling me what to do. So when I was writing these stories, I wasn't thinking, oh, this is what I'm doing. I'm writing these blueprints, or I'm writing about women from a totally different perspective. In fact, I was writing a novel that was under contract, and I worked on it for 2.5 years, and I eventually ended up abandoning it because it was bad. And I teach a lot, and I felt like a hypocrite. I tell my students all the time, I don't want to read something unless I feel like it has some bloody fingerprints on the page. If you're not giving me something that's truthful, I'm really not interested.
Speaking about truthful, these characters are so vivid, they are so true to life. You feel like you get under their skin. In fact, in one passage you write about how this woman, shortly after she lost her baby or had a miscarriage, her husband's hands on her shoulders, hands of a man who doesn't care anymore. Right. How much of these characters are you? Where do we find you in any of these characters?
That's an interesting question. When I started writing the stories, like I said, I was sort of writing them in private. I was writing them cheating on the novel. But I was writing stories that I felt like I had to write. I had just had a child, and I found that really, not frightening, very alienating in a way. I was dropped into a world that I never imagined being a part of, despite the fact I wanted to be a mother. Mm-hmm. And so I was writing about the people around me that I was trying to make sense of, which is the whole reason that I started writing in the first place, I think, as a child, was to make sense of the world around me. I really sometimes don't even know what I think until I've written it down, but also as a place to put this anger and discomfort with the universe that, being raised a good girl, you don't voice that. You're not allowed to act out on that. So I was writing these stories about people that I was meeting, older mothers that I observed, and I was writing about the stuff that concerned me and frightened me. And I felt really lonely in a way. So some of the stories definitely come out of a place of feeling lonely. I didn't write the stories thinking anybody was even going to read them necessarily. I was writing them for myself. So I am the God that created that world, but I am not all those women, except in the way that I contain multitudes. I know all these women.
Right.
I feel what a lot of these women have felt. I don't approve of a lot of the behavior that these women engage in, but I certainly recognize them and I love them.